Hello Chain Gang, and welcome back to the 4 Chains Travel. If you were with us last week, you saw our video about why we chose retirement travel. And this week we're going to tell you how we can afford to do retirement travel.
Yeah, that's the big question everybody has. A lot of videos are out there about how much you need to retire on, and we're not going to make one of those videos because everybody's situation is different. Everybody's journey is different. There's so many variables. But what makes retirement travel such a hard concept for people, and by people I mean your family and friends.
Right.
Yeah, they're
not going to get it.
No, they are not going to get it. But it's understandable because you would think that retiring by traveling the world would acquire so much more accumulation of wealth than a typical retirement in the United States where you work till a certain age and then you spend the rest of your days at home. But in fact, retirement travel requires far less wealth to be accumulated. Everybody's situation is different. I would really love, because we are building a community here, for you to tell us what your story is in the comments. But we're going to give you a quick recap of our story. I spent most of my career with Domino's Pizza. If you follow this channel, you will know that I have been able to make some money playing poker, particularly the World Series of Poker, but certainly not enough money to be considered wealthy in any financial sense.
Right. With your job, you didn't have access to a retirement plan for the majority of your career.
Right.
No 401k, no 403b, anything
no
like
pension.
that. Yeah. So although the salary was good, you know, most people work to live instead of live to work. Did I say that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean. And that's the case where if you have a great salary, maybe you're living well at the time, but you've got to take it upon yourself to put that money away for retirement. Otherwise, you're going to really be hammered at the end.
And you left, you worked and you did a great job and it was very fulfilling, but not the kind of wealth accumulation.
Yeah, for me, I was working either as an independent contractor for most of my adult life, or I owned a small business. When our youngest was 2, I was a music and movement specialist in multiple preschools in our city because my background was in dance and a little bit of music, so it was the natural progression for me. And then I transitioned that into starting my own business, teaching music and movement in the local recreation department and then also privately. So of course I was an independent contractor, small business owner, no retirement, no health care or health care out of pocket, which is very, very expensive in this country. After we had moved a couple times and came back to the area, then I decided it was smarter to start working in the school system, so at least I would have some access to a retirement account. There I did have a 403b, but I was working as a special education paraprofessional, so the salary was horrendous. I did that most of my time in the school system, so my retirement was very small. My last 2 years I was able to move into administration, but that was only 2 years of that. And that wasn't also, by the way, a great salary either, just better than in the classroom.
If you're watching this in Asia, you might be confused. In the United States, we do not value our school system and our education. You can just look at a chart for where we ranked in the world in education and what's happened to it. But, originally, retirement traveler was not our first financial goal.
No. As adults and young parents, our goal was always that when our kids went to college, that they would be able to go to great colleges and that they would walk away debt-free or with very, very little debt. And we were very lucky, and I'm grateful that we were able to accomplish that.
Our colleges were both very limited by our family's financial situation. I got into a lot of great colleges and unfortunately was not able to attend almost all of them just because of the situation. And it really limited the colleges you applied to.
Yeah, I didn't even apply to schools that I knew were out of my family's price range in terms of affording the tuition.
Okay, so take us to, we want you to know we had a very little time to accumulate a retirement for us. You want to explain why? The timeline there?
Well, by the time our youngest graduated from college, that only left us a few years where our employers did have retirement plans. So we only really had a 5 to 10 period max where we were able to really build up any kind of nest egg whatsoever. The only thing that we did have going for us is that last year, year before, 2023, we were able to pay off both our house and our car. So that was huge.
Yeah,
and
we'll get to why that's important in a second. But I would say that, our kids, their colleges were both about $60,000 a year, tuition, room, and board, and they were able to graduate without the big debt, and that made a big difference. The one reason we were able to do that is, although we never made a ton of money, we put a little bit away at all times. We've really spent our entire lives really focusing on investments. Over the course of our lives, we've returned about 12%. We had a couple of really good buys in there, but for the purpose of this, for you understanding your financial situation, we're going to use 10%. 10% is the average rate of return in the stock market since the Great Depression. So if you put a blindfold on and you threw darts at the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones and just invested in those stocks, your average return would be 10%. If you don't have a financial advisor, we've been fortunate. We've got a couple of great ones. And if you are not comfortable with financial advisors, there's a link for Webull where you can buy your own stocks for free. And if you're part of our community, we do discuss every quarter, we discuss the best choices for retirement travel. So we're going to talk about just the shocking math and the budget. And you were really introduced to this by Grounded Life. We're going to give a plug to their channel because Rob and Allie's channel, they've really educated on us because their situation was very similar to us. So they didn't make a ton of money, but they were putting a little bit away in investments. Where we differed from them is their expenses living in Atlanta were $8,000 a month. They had $250,000 equity in their home. I wouldn't be sharing this with you if they hadn't already.
Definitely check out their channel.
That's right. And I'm explaining this because you would think that we are not a good candidate for retirement travel. They're the perfect candidate. But if you look deeper, the scope of people that are great candidates is very, very large. So,
and again, everyone approaches it their own way.
Yes. So they realized with no retirement, at $8,000 a month, eventually, physically, they would have to retire. And the math just didn't work. So they were almost forced into retirement travels to reduce their costs. So what they did was they sold their house. They realized that $250,000 in equity at a 10% return. That's $25,000 a year income. They sold their car. They sold their possessions. And then they did have a little bit of income remaining from the investments that they made. Our situation is different. You want to explain like the difference between ours and theirs?
It's the same and different. It's the similarities that drew me to their channel. Again, Grounded Life, definitely check that out. Like and subscribe.
Love you, Rob and Allie.
Our lifestyle was very different because we were living off of less than $3,000 a month.
We also are in the same situation in terms of that we have the equity in our house, but it is also a prison for our money. That money, now that our house is paid off, is not doing anything for us. And even though we don't have a mortgage and a car payment, it still costs us a lot of money to live here, and it still costs us a lot of money to drive our car.
Right, because we have property taxes that we have to pay. We have to pay real estate taxes, any repairs on the house. In terms of the car, you've got inspection costs, personal property costs, gas, repairs. In fact, this year we had, when we went to get the car inspected, we had a $1,000 repair because we needed new tires. And then there was one other thing that failed the inspection that we had to have fixed.
But we're lucky. Our neighbors down the street, David and Sandy, hey, David and Sandy, they're just starting the credit card game. But they have a huge expense, different video for next week. They have a huge expense in their basement, and it's an expense we anticipate we might have down the road. And then, of course, there's the health insurance situation.
Yeah, for me,
all of us, you included, face if you're in the United States.
Yeah, I would say that if you're working for an employer who pays a big chunk of money toward your health insurance, then you're really lucky. But even with that, I don't know anyone who is paying very little out of pocket. Even with those employer-sponsored healthcare programs, healthcare in the United States is very, very expensive. In fact, for over 500,000 people a year, it's not only expensive, it's enough to bankrupt them. So
Italy's what opened our eyes to this, right?
Yeah.
We were in Italy with Kira and Leia, our daughters, and Kira had a medical emergency. So of course, that's the biggest fear of a parent. I was so glad I spoke fluent Italian. I was able to talk to the doctor. And then at the point where I pulled out my health insurance card, the doctor started speaking English because he knew.
And laughing.
He explained to me, now listen, this isn't free. This isn't England, but we don't accept your insurance card. You're going to have to pay cash. And my heart just sank.
Yeah.
And then he's like, this is the way it works. In Italy, for regular doctor's visits, it's 10 euros. But you're in, for this emergency visit, it's going to be twice that.
Yeah.
So I handed over the 20 euros and we're startled by the high level of care that we got. And listen, it gets a lot worse than that. My dad, you might be saying to yourself, wait a minute, how could you not afford college when your dad, if you saw last week's video, if your dad's a congressman? Well, first of all, he wasn't a congressman when we were going to college. We were in the same grade. He was the mayor of our town, which sounds cool, but I think it was about $23,000 a year. Now, later on, he did become a congressman, but this is how it can happen even to a congressman, health insurance. My younger sister got a brain tumor. The medical bills were well into the 7 figures. He had insurance, about as good insurance as you can get, covered about 20% of that. So do the math. Congressman at the time, I think he was making $139,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's not doable on that because he didn't have wealth coming from anybody else. So in this country, you can do everything right. You can have amazing, health insurance, and it can really hurt you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not just health insurance, everything. Meals, we get great meals in Mexico for $4 that cost $100 here. So, it's you can afford it, it's less. You have to do the math though.
Yeah. So basically what you're going to be looking at is living off of about 10% of whatever those possessions are. And that's going to dictate what your yearly budget is, and that's going to dictate where you're able to live.
Yeah, where you can live and travel to is just dictated by that. We just had an incredible story. We're going to do an entire video on a neighbor of ours that I used to coach in softball, and now she's living in the kind of luxury that we have never lived in Southeast Asia. You want to give like a quick, we'll give you the whole story, but
ran into her mom this week and unexpectedly found out that this person needed to go to another country in order for her girlfriend to have emergency surgery, which was going to be very, very expensive, and they couldn't afford it here. So they went to Thailand, it was Bangkok in particular, had the surgery, stayed in this unbelievably luxurious condo across the street from the hospital. And we definitely want to have her on the show to talk about that. But she's now living in Vietnam.
Yeah, she didn't even come home. She never came home afterwards.
It was such a great experience and saved so much money, just the whole cost of living, but particularly this health situation.
She's in Da Nang on the beach in luxury right now. How much is she paying a month for that apartment?
Under $400 a month.
Under $400. So that's just an example. But I want to say it's not just locating the places that are less expensive, locating when to do it. It's a shoulder season thing. It's something you need to understand. But also retirement travelers, because they're always traveling, get to utilize the points and miles system that my wife is obsessed with to expedite a lot of the costs. And that's going to be the focus in the next couple of videos that we're going to do.
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time lately getting more familiar with what exactly points and miles are and how to best utilize them. And I've been trying to share this wealth with everybody I know. So on our video next week, we're going to talk about the best credit cards for retirement travelers. And what you should know is that probably 99% of the population has no idea how much free stuff they could be getting if they understand the intricacies of these programs. For instance, we recently got the Amex Platinum, which allowed us to get global entry and TSA for free.
TSA pre-check.
Pre-check. And that's essentially where, with TSA pre-check, you don't have to take off your belts and your shoes, and the liquids thing is much easier going through the airports. And for global entry, you get back into the United States on a really expedited basis in terms of customs and those lines as well.
I'm going to confess to you guys, I almost peed my pants when we were coming back from Mexico from the last video. We left that out of the video, and we saw a guy in global entry, and it took him 30 seconds to get through customs. It was unbelievable. So that's what we're doing from now on. That's how we roll. And it's free with Amex Platinum.
And it sounds like this would be something that you have to be rich in order to have access to.
He did look rich.
But we aren't rich, and we have access to it because of Amex, and we're going to talk more about that. We like having access to our streaming services for free. In April, we paid cash to fly from DC to London because we wanted to be on the same plane as our daughter who was going with us. And
that's the last time we're doing it.
But we already have enough points to make sure that that's going to be our last overseas trip paying cash for. And moving forward, we'll be using our points and miles and probably flying business class.
When you get into this world, you are done paying cash for airline tickets. Let's just say that, and we'll cover it later. Now, during the World Series of Poker, I actually had a relative that got mad at me because I was staying at the Cosmopolitan. It's almost $400 a night. It was free for me because of the credit card sign-up bonus. The trip before that to Vegas and the trip after that, if you just saw those videos, all the hotels were free except for the Paris hotel, and that's just me being dumb and not studying like my wife. We're staying at a 5-star resort in Cancun coming up for Angie's dental surgery. I'm sure our relatives are going to be like, what are they doing? But
in fact, I didn't tell my relatives I was having my dental surgery done. This is a 2-step process. I did it, came back, told them I did it, and now I've told them that I'm going back the second time because they realize it was actually a great thing.
It's $1,000 all-inclusive stay, and it's only costing us $650 because we get $350 reimbursed. We have a 4-night stay in London coming up for free. We have a 4-night stay in Dublin, Ireland coming up where the hotel is going to be free. So we're going to go over all of that, but just the loyalty programs, getting the companion certificate so your family can vacation for free. One of the big worries is missing your family, but if you can offer them, you not only get free hotels that they can stay in, they get to enjoy your elite status when they're staying in the hotel. So it's a much cheaper vacation for that. We have multiple cases coming up where family and friends are going to be with us in Italy, in London, in Ireland, and we're hoping to get more. So it's just the difference between vacation traveling and slow traveling, right?
That's really the takeaway, is that vacationing and retirement traveling are two different things. It's about how you approach it. Like, for instance, you might know people that have recently dropped maybe $5,000 on a Caribbean vacation for a week, or $10,000 to go to Europe for 2 weeks, or something like that. And we've actually had similar experiences, but we're not doing that anymore. And like we said last week, the advantage of being able to do retirement travel is that you're doing it at a slow pace. So you're really getting able to immerse yourself in the local culture and live more like the locals do. And that's very appealing to us.
There's lots of, immersing yourself in the culture. It's less expensive. It's a more fulfilling experience, but just taking what she's talking about, like that $10,000 2-week vacation in Italy. I'm not saying don't do that, but during that time we had 2 or 3 train rides. We took a plane trip in there, and that wasn't that particularly expensive to Naples, but we also had a couple of really expensive Uber drivers on places we had to get to because we couldn't afford to lose the time because we were fast traveling or vacation traveling. So there's a lot of extra expenses we're not going to be using moving forward.
And I think that people think that if you're doing retirement traveling that you're not having great food, or that you're not getting to do experiences that you would do when you're doing touristy stuff on a vacation, not retirement travel. But that's not true.
Check out our $40 a day Puerto Morelos video because that was awesome. It doesn't have to be like Jimmy Kimmel. There are a lot of people, he goes to Italy for the summers. He took literally millions of dollars less salary. He spent $360,000 in a couple of months. We're going to spend more time than Jimmy Kimmel next year in Italy, and we're going to be spending far less than 10%. So this is just an overview of the categories. In the coming weeks, as Angie said, we're going to be uploading videos. Next week is going to be talking about the credit cards that you need specifically for a retirement traveler that are really going to make things cheaper. And we're going to go into each category: the slow travel, the credit card game, transportation, the difference between Airbnb and Booking.com. All of those things we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks. So please like and subscribe. I know I forgot to ask that in like 99%
we always forget.
of
Please
the videos.
like and subscribe. That would really help us out and enable enable us to keep sharing information with you. Also, please comment. We want to hear other people's experiences about if this is of interest to you, if you're currently doing it, what's working, what's not working. And other than that, we will see you next time on the 4 Chains Travel.
Yay! See you next week. Credit card game. It's different in 2025, but we're going to make you prepared.